R4. I'm Sophia Miranda, and I'm going to be attending the University of Nevada, Reno.
My name is Carolee Sin, and I'm attending Boise State University.
My name is Ohino Majumdar, and I will also be attending the University of Nevada, Reno.
I'm Zach Mahana. I'll be attending Sierra College.
And I'm Miranda Cross, and I'll be attending Vanderbilt University. And our unit coach and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
I'm just kidding. I was just thinking.
Everyone always does that. It's okay. I'm used to it.
It's okay. Compare the American and British ideas of representation. What are their most important differences? In what respects are they similar? Compare the relationship of the British Prime Minister to Parliament with the relationship of the President of the United States to Congress. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each arrangement? In the British system of the Crown are simultaneous members of Parliament. Why did Americans reject this idea? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each arrangement? Meet again.
Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where I bent in the undergrowth.
From the end of the French and Indian War, the British Parliament's principle of taxation and virtual representation fueled the American colonists' ardor for revolution. The revolution was fought on a dual promise, independence from Great Britain and a new form of government, free from the abuses and usurpations that King George and the British Parliament committed.
Then I took the other just as fair, and perhaps having the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing head there had worn them both really about the same.
The road the colonists chose was the American Constitution, an entirely new way of organizing government, with written fundamental law and a bicameral legislature. The basic structure of the American legislature was similar to Parliament, but attempted to rid itself of what Thomas Paine called aristocratical tyranny in the persons of the peers. The framers created the House of Representatives based on proportional representation, which bears strong resemblance to the House of Commons.
Although both the House of Representatives and the House of Commons are elected to represent constituencies, Article 1, Section 2 and 3 specifically state that the members of Congress must reside in the state in which they represent. This provision stemmed from the framers' indignation with the Parliament's virtual representation of the colonies, and draws from the early state constitutions, which included direct representations in state legislatures. The Senate was also created to be a deliberative body, much like the House of Lords, but with one major difference. It was created to represent the state's interests in the new federal system.
And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back.
The framers diverged from the parliamentary system with the creation of the president. While the monarch was the original executive of the British system, in the modern era, the prime minister functions as both the chief executive and the head of the legislature. This is advantageous because it allows for greater expediency in the legislature than the American system. The prime minister sets the agenda with the support from the majority party or coalition, and thus usually has the necessary votes to pass legislation. The president is a true executive with the control of the legislative process. Article 2, Section 1 states that the executive power shall be vested in the president. And Article 2, Section 2 endows the president with the power of commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Having little control in the affairs of Congress can hamper president's major goals. In 2013, the House refused to vote on a bipartisan immigration bill, ending President Obama's goals for comprehensive immigration reform. However, the president has played a crucial role as commander-in-chief, especially in times of crisis. Because of this power, America is greater equipped to deal with military emergencies and regional crises. Following the escalation in Syria, President Obama unilaterally decided to begin airstrikes in Syria in September 2014. Hindered by disagreements, Prime Minister David Cameron finally received majority approval in December 2015 to launch airstrikes into Syria, 15 months after the U.S.
Many of the abuses and usurpations committed by British officials were directly related to the actions of cabinet ministers in Parliament, leading the framers to reject this system. In Parliament, ministers of the Crown are simultaneously members of Parliament and exercise control over legislation pertaining to their department, but may not have the expertise in that field. Current U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter has been a senior official in the Defense Department since 1993, while British Home Secretary Theresa May had no defense experience before 2010.
The framers avoided the mingling of the cabinet and the legislature. Article 2, Section 2 allows the president to appoint, with the consent of the Senate, other public ministers. Cabinet officials serve as presidential advisors who are insulated from public opinion, but can be subject to extremely political confirmation process, especially during congressional gridlock.
I shall be telling this to the sun somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in the Yellowwood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
This is what has set America apart.
Our Constitution,
Our founders.
Our American principles.
Thank you.
440. 40.
440.
Prime Minister's powers are not limited by a written constitution. What limits does the U.S. Constitution place on the powers of the president?
The limits on the powers of the president are contained within Article 2. It says that the president is vested with the power to execute laws and vested with the power of commander-in-chief. The difference in specificity lies in Article 1, Section 8, which says that Congress specifically is vested with the power to regulate things like taxation, coining money, and interstate commerce. That's not the president's job. The president's job is not to make legislation, it's to enforce the legislation that's already made and to control the military. So it's in the wording of the Constitution.
So, in light of today's political climate, we see situations where the president might make a political appointment, but have a very difficult time of getting that appointment approved through the Senate. Should we maintain that system, or should that system be changed through an amendment process so that cabinet members, for example, can be selected and the business of the government can go forward without necessarily being gridlocked?
The process should not be amended because the Senate was created to be a slow deliberative body, and this applies to all aspects of what the Senate has to do. And I think the confirmation process being so slow and deliberative makes sure that it gives the public reassurance that the people who are coming into office are maybe better and have been researched and looked at and are the better people for the job. So there should not be an amendment process to change how the Senate would go through the confirmation process.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt said that the problems of the world are caused just as much by those who fear change as those who seek revolution. So in the sense that there's adding this amendment process to this would be because of this gridlock and this hyperpartisanship that we have. It's not going to see either the revolution that one side seeks or the change that the other side fears, and there's not going to be an equal playing field for them.
This is also contrasted with the British system, because in the British system, the certain state secretaries are chosen from the party, so they may not have prior experience, as Theresa May did not have prior experience dealing with domestic issues as the Home Secretary of Great Britain.
I think barring probably the last 5 years, candidates who've been qualified for these offices that are appointed by the president have really had not a lot of trouble getting through the Senate. An example of this would be current Secretary of Energy Ernest Moniz was confirmed by a vote of 97-0 in the Senate. This was in 2010. And he was a highly qualified individual. He was a professor of physics at MIT and got the post as Secretary of Energy because of his nonpartisan nature. So I think probably with the exception of the controversial Supreme Court nominee issue that's currently going on, we haven't seen a lot of trouble in the past getting qualified people confirmed.
What lessons, in light of the current presidential election / carnival, what lessons about coalition building can the United States learn from the parliamentary system?
I think the United States system of government could definitely adopt, just find a way, this coalition building could show the American system how to work together with individuals from the opposite, like the opposing party. In Britain, while it is basically a two-system party, they are pretty moderate in their, they're not as distinct in their separation. It's not like one spectrum and the other side. It's very moderate in the middle, whereas in the American system, it's definitely very far right and far left. So we don't work together as often.
I would argue with the premise of your question. I don't think that, especially in the last 5 years, coalition building really has existed in Britain. The Liberal Democrats, who were the major third party in Britain in the British Parliament up until last year's elections in 2015, actually largely been absorbed into the Conservative Party. Now you see an absolute majority in the British Parliament for the Conservative Party.
Isn't that a coalition?
No, because
Why
it's
not?
all one party.
But they're the same
So
people.
there's no deputy prime minister, and there's no third party trying to represent their own interests. It's the Conservatives who have an absolute majority in the cabinet and the prime minister, and then the Labour Party who has a shadow cabinet. There's no coalition within the main party. There's disagreements, yes, but there's not a strict coalition because there is no third party. And they have an absolute majority to govern.
Okay.
The current presidential race, they could learn through the British coalitions how to get things done rather than saying that I will get this done for America. They should learn how to build coalitions through their parties and through the majority party and the minority party to get things done rather than having both parties just go at it trying to get each of their laws passed. So they need to form coalitions with other parties or different committees in the Senate or something to to get things done rather than just each presidential candidate trying to get things done through their own power.
Well, and their campaign process.
Go ahead.
Well, their campaign process is completely different, and that they're not allowed to run television ads. Where, as we see in the U.S. with these ads, we see candidates just attacking each other and putting, in some cases, false pictures, as we saw with Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. They put a picture of Rubio shaking President Obama's hand, and that was completely photoshopped. Whereas in
How
the
dare he?
Whereas in the UK, they're not even allowed to show these. You have to physically look up your candidate, and you cannot just be sitting watching TV and absorb this information, this false information.
All right. Thoughts?
I'm gonna focus mainly on the cross-X. Make sure you have lots of participation from everybody.